I feel like we need an injection of Liddle common sense.
Wes Streeting, I don't think he stands a hope. She's a chancer, she's greedy, she is a gob on a stick, basically. I don't care about the ginger growler stuff. And if she became Prime Minister, I would be so ashamed. A generation which is fantastically fucking stupid, i.e. ignorant of the facts. And that's how you get a snaggle-toothed breast whisperer like Zach Polanski.
Hello, welcome back to the Brendan O'Neill Show with me, Brendan O'Neill, and my special guest today, Rod Liddle. Rod, welcome to the show.
Hiya, mate. A pleasure to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
It's great to have you back on. It's been far too long, although I've been on your show on Times Radio a couple of times, although every time I do it, it's someone else. Ed Vasey. So.
Oh, really? Yeah. I think they keep us apart.
Yeah.
Right. But no, it's all right.
Too combustible.
But it's always good to talk to you. And the Times Radio program, well, the Times Radio program is slightly different to a lot of the Times Radio stuff in that, you know, it's belligerent, arrogant, and unpleasant a lot of the time, which I think is good. But there we go.
It is, yeah, it's a great show. I love to do it. So it's brilliant. I highly recommend it to people. They should listen. Rod, I feel like we need an injection of Liddle common sense in the contemporary political discussion. There's a lot going on. By the time this podcast comes out, it'll probably be all out of date because we'll have a new prime minister or something like that. What do you think about what's happening? What do you think about Keir Starmer's position? Is it tenable? Can he stay on? What's going on there, do you think?
Well, one is torn, as one always is in these issues, between what one wants to happen and what I expect to happen. I think, you know, this interview will be perfectly in date. I think Sir Keir Starmer will still be there. I think there will be a challenge of sorts from Wes Streeting, but I don't think that Wes has anything but the enmity of the majority of the Parliamentary Labour Party. And while the majority of the party wishes to see Sir Keir Starmer replaced, they don't want him replaced by someone who is the same as Sir Keir Starmer, except perhaps more competent, perhaps not. So I can't see that challenge working out. If you ask me to guess, you know, for a year's time from now, I'd say we'd probably have Andy Burnham as Prime Minister. For what good that would do. That would help the Labour Party a little bit, but I don't think it would obviate the problems they've got with reform in the north, and really not that much with the Greens in the south.
In relation to Starmer, just to see what his fortunes might be, I've seen some people in the media saying they're starting to feel a bit sorry for him. I almost felt sorry for him the other day because I thought he is getting so much flack, but then I remembered that he's a bit of a twat, etc. What are your own feelings towards him? Has he just inherited a poisoned chalice? How much should we hold him responsible for the misfortunes of the party itself?
I think there's a couple of things to think about. On the one hand, there's Sir Keir Starmer, his character and his competence. I think he's incompetent. I think he's a corporate man who does not have a political principle in his body. Which in one way is good in that he's not too ideological, but in most ways is bad in that he doesn't know what he stands for. He's indecisive. His decision-making is based upon adverse reaction. It's always reactive. He has been averagely successful in foreign affairs, certainly a lot more successful than he is in domestic affairs. But is otherwise a hugely unremarkable prime minister, and there are facets about his character which are really great on the public, such as a robotic adenoidal voice. That being said, we are pretty much ungovernable. If you look at the figures, every prime minister who has come in has been more unpopular than the one who preceded him or her, and this goes all the way back to Tony Blair. Whoever becomes Prime Minister, and this is true if it's Nigel Farage, or Zach Polanski will be comprehensively hated within 3 months by the vast majority of people in the country. There's a whole bunch of reasons for that. Partly it's social media, it's the speed with which we become polarized in debate, it's being assuaged over 80 years through peace and affluence, to the degree that we no longer think that anybody is capable of leading us. It's rather like being a Newcastle United fan. Nobody is quite good enough to either own your club or indeed manage it. This dissatisfaction sets in. None of that is Sir Keir Starmer's fault. Sir Keir Starmer may be utterly useless, but whoever is in charge, even if it's Farage, there would be the same levels of hatred and odium poured upon them.
I think that's an important observation and tells us something about the climate in which we're all stewing right now. In relation to his challengers, Wes Streeting, we've already touched on. I find him also very unremarkable. Andy Burnham, who they call the King of the North. Angela Rayner, I don't understand the attraction of her at all. What do you make of those challengers to the throne? Is there any of them that are any good?
Well, the only one who's any good is the one you haven't mentioned, who is a challenger. So good reason for not mentioning her, which is Shabana Mahmood, who I think would be a fine prime minister. I think there is a sense of realism, but also principle there. I don't think there's any principle with Andy, though I think Andy Burnham, though, in fairness, I voted for him in 2015 for the leadership of the Labour Party. I was tied between him and Liz Kendall. But he will change his political opinions according to whatever happens on a day-to-day basis. I don't think we'd be terribly well off. He has got beautiful eyelashes. I mean, and that's something which we shouldn't discount. Wes Streeting, I don't think he stands a hope. He only stands a hope if he ditches everything which he said he stands for, which is reimagining the way in which the health service works, for example, cutting back on welfare, all the kinds of stuff which the rather more serious figure of Shabana Mahmood would also do. If he is wedded to that line, the Labour Party is against him. The country is in favour of him. The Labour Party is against him. And this is a big problem for Labour. If they go to the left, they're going against their voters, or the majority of their voters. They may pick up a few recusant Greens along the way, but they will be losing the majority, which will give them a majority to govern. If they go to the right, then there's internecine warfare in the Labour Party. So they really are in an appalling position.
What about I agree with you on Shabana Mahmood, by the way. I think she's actually, she wears her principles on her sleeves, and I think she's serious about getting a handle on the immigration problem. But what about Angela Rayner? Why do you think her name is even in the hat? What does she represent? What is she all about?
Because affluent middle-class people think she's a shining example of working-class aspirationalism. That's about all there is. Now, I can't believe that anyone who's working class would be taken in by that ghastly woman for a single moment. She's a chancer. She's greedy. I don't think there's a great deal of depth or education or philosophy behind what she says. She promotes a form of politics which is basically Tory scum on the one hand and just cheering on the other. It's inane and witless, and I would be embarrassed to be British if Angela Rayner were our Prime Minister. She is a gob on a stick, basically. I don't care, Brendan, about her vagina. You know, I don't care about the ginger growler stuff. Good for her. It's always good to have a ginger growler waved around somewhere in the air. But, you know, she is also, as is becoming increasingly common with politicians, seems to not know where she lives, and has cheated the taxpayer out of money. You know, I cannot accept that she is a credible contender for the leader of the Labour Party and thus Prime Minister. And if she became Prime Minister, I would be so ashamed.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. It would be a shaming moment for this country. If you have a question about British politics, Israel, Iran, or any of the other topics we've been discussing here on the Brendan O'Neill Show, then I would love to hear from you at my upcoming Q&A event. The Q&A will take place live over Zoom on Tuesday, the 9th of June, and is exclusive to Spike supporters. That means if you're already a supporter, you can sign up for your free ticket right now by clicking the link below. If you're not yet a supporter, why not become one right now? Follow the link in the description and get yourself access to exclusive or discounted tickets to all our events, plus unlimited access to the Spiked website. I hope as many of you as possible will join me at the live Q&A next month, and I look forward to answering all your questions there. See you then. Just to go back to Shabana Mahmood for a second, because one of the issues on which she is saying interesting things and getting flack from the Labour Party itself, of course, and from the stupid left, is on the immigration question, the immigration crisis, broken borders, small boats, etc. She does seem genuine about wanting to get a handle on that. What is it about that crisis that just makes most politicians run scared? They don't want to talk about it. They don't want to confront it, because it's a pretty serious situation, isn't it?
It is. It's the people who run scared from it are white liberals. They have never really understood or bought into the notion that untrammeled immigration into this country is something which lowers the wages of the very poorest of us in society, and is therefore to be opposed from the left, primarily from the left. No, but also, of course, this is the Labour Party we're talking about, and they are in hock to those cultures which they believe are underprivileged and deserve support. So, in short, Islam. So that is why the Labour Party has a problem with saying anything sensible on the issue of immigration, and why, of course, conversely, Shabana Mahmood can get away with saying some of those things because she is of obviously an Asian background. But the party doesn't believe her. I suspect, actually, excuse me, that Sir Keir Starmer and West Streeting and a good few others believe that she's on the right track. And her record has been, it could be a bit over-egged by circumstances. Immigration is down by 2/3, and it's no longer the front page of the newspapers, which is a massive victory for Labour, given the state that we were in when they came to office. But she cannot carry the Labour Party with her, or the vast majority of it. There needs to be a kind of shifting of the Overton window within Labour on this very, very crucial issue.
And in relation to that Overton window, what do you think are the prospects for Blue Labour and, Lord Glassman, God bless him, still fighting his corner? He has a few people in Labour who are listening to him, but not that many. Blue Labour would be a little bit more where you and I would fall if we were to be in the Labour Party, I feel. Is there any prospect for them to come through at any point, do you think?
No, I don't think so. And, I've been Blue Labour since 1978, frankly. I was even Blue Labour when I was in the Socialist Workers' Party, if we're honest about it. No, I think there was a degree of influence there with Morgan McSweeney, who Morris always described to me as being pretty much Blue Labour down the line. McSweeney's gone. The left is in the ascendant. And therefore, all the stuff which might appeal to the Red Wall voters in the north of England, where I am now, or indeed to the sensible lower middle class voters in the south and southeast, and indeed East Anglia and the Midlands and so on, are going to be alienated by a party which, if it's allowed to indulge in its grossest fantasies, will become a slightly less alluring Green Party, which is one of the prospects we have in front of us. I think there is an impulse within Labour at the moment to try to reclaim those middle class votes which they've lost to the Greens and to a degree to Ed Davies' pantomime horse, which has happened over the last couple of years because of people like Shabana Mahmood, because of Starmer on Israel, and so on. So if anything's going to be jettisoned, I would think that stuff is going to be jettisoned, even though it's what I think is directly against the needs of the people and the needs of the voters, the people who Labour needs to have voting for it in order to win an election.
Okay, you mentioned the Green Party, the most extraordinary outfit in Britain right now. I did want to get your views on them. I mean, we should start with Zach Polanski. What is Zach Polanski all about? What I can't figure out if he's a snake oil salesman or something just a bit more innocent and simple-minded. What do you make of Polanski?
Well, I think you've got it in two there. He's a simple-minded snake oil salesman. He's an inept charlatan, a chancer, a liar. He is just possibly the worst politician that we have thrown up in the last 50 years. And I include in that Nick Griffin and John Tyndall, because they were at least rather more moderate on the issue of Israel than the Green Party is at the moment. Why is he there? Why has he got the clout he's got? I think you have to look at a whole bunch of things, some of which I'll be talking about later when we jointly talk to a bunch of Jewish people in Leeds, Brendan. You know, I think the move away in education, I think the way that the Second World War has receded in history from us is important in a whole bunch of ways which have changed the way in which this country works. But crucially in this issue, I think it's about a failure that nobody who was brought up as I was with a history of World War II could possibly call what Hamas, what the IDF did in Gaza as genocide. You just simply couldn't do it, because we knew what genocide was, and we knew about it, and we knew how its true awfulness, its true ghastliness. That's gone. That has gone for everyone below my generation. So there is that on the one hand. On the second hand, and this is important too, we no longer value the acquisition of knowledge, either in exams for kids, GCSEs and A-levels and so on, or generally. You know, it's about my truth versus your truth and my lived experience versus your lived experience. So acquired knowledge doesn't count for very much. And when you put those two things together, you get a generation which is fantastically fucking stupid, i.e. ignorant of the facts, and doesn't value the facts, and is prepared to ignore the facts and to go instead on their own emotions and their lived experiences. And that's how you get a snaggle-toothed breast whisperer like Zach Polanski becoming an important politician in this country. I know quite a few people in the Green Party. I've voted Green before now. I voted Green in 1989, which was kind of one of their breakthrough moments in the Euro elections of 1989. I also voted for them in 2005 after Tony Blair's interesting decision to launch an illegal war against Iraq. Even in 2005, they were beginning to turn, and they are now a party which comprises morons and Muslims in kind of equal proportion.
Well, on that question of morons and Muslims, I was very keen to get your views on the Gorton and Denton phenomenon. And we have this kind of CBeebies presenter, Hannah Spencer, mingling with, you know, sinister looking blokes who obviously think she's a kind of sinful kafir. What did you make of that unholy alliance between that woman, Hannah Spencer, and the kind of Islamist movement in Gorton and Denton? I mean, that was a kind of turning point moment for what we're faced with right now, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, it's like Queers for Palestine, isn't it? It's people who have absolutely no grasp on reality, whether that be the Muslims of Gorton and Denton, who are voting for a party which is in favour of every possible flavour of LGBTQI idiocy that you could dream of, or the white liberals in the party who would be aghast if they actually found out what Islam demands of its adherents. It's rather like you would have seen this story. The council in Michigan, I think it was Michigan. It may have been Minnesota, but I think it was Michigan, which was run by white liberals who continually advanced the cause of the Muslim minority and had short lists and for Muslim people, and were always opening Muslim hubs and community centres, until eventually the Muslims took over and were the majority within that party on the city council. And the first thing they did was rip down the rainbow flags. Day one, down they came. I have to say, though I disagree with them fervently about Israel, my sympathies are rather with the green Muslims rather than the green white liberals, because at least they have a grip on reality, I think, whereas the pink-haired, nose-ringed, as Tim Stanley put it, Stalin with a nose ring, I just don't think they know what day it is, what they want from the world, what they think they can give to the world. It is just an ocean, a vast ocean of banality and stupidity. Whereas at least the Muslims think, yeah, well, this is a decent way to make a third party inroad into British politics. We'll do that.
Yeah, it's a point well made. On the green Muslims, I wanted to get your thoughts on Mothin Ali, because I can't figure out if he's a scary.
They're not. Those Muslims are not remotely green. I mean, you ask them about carbon emissions, they would look bemused. There is no interest whatsoever in all the things which contribute towards green issues other than Gaza. That's the only one there is. But sorry, go on, Brendan. I interrupted.
It's absolutely true. And we saw footage of some of these supposedly green Muslims driving around in their Mercedes and spewing all these carbons into the atmosphere because they're not interested in the environment question at all. But I wanted to get your thoughts on Mothin Ali, because I sometimes I see Mothin Ali and I can't figure out if he's scary or comical, because his absence from that little BDSM show that the Green Party had in Trafalgar Square, that was a very notable absence, where he obviously skulked off because they had all these half-naked gay dancers. Has he just landed himself too deep into this movement? What do you think Mothin Ali's about? What does the future hold for him?
Well, I think he's a moron, and if you watch his interviews, you would be forced to come to that conclusion. He is verging on inarticulate. He doesn't have a grasp of politics, and there's no great ability to debate with an opponent there, apart from to shout over them. He's odious, but of course he is absolutely vital to the current Green vote. At some point in time, I think we're already beginning to see it a bit. I noticed that Zach Polanski's popularity ratings had gone down something like 17%. I think some of the more sentient creatures that live in the Green Party or are thinking of voting Green are beginning to realise that, this really doesn't hang together. It doesn't have any sense. And there are some truly odious people in the party. And I think Andrew Gilligan deserves a lot of praise for having uprooted some of those awful people in London. There are loads more, by the way, in Newcastle. There's another 3 of them there. So I think people are beginning to notice. I don't think the Green Party is terribly viable as a political alternative, and my guess is that it may diminish over the next 3 or 4 years.
I was interested to get your thoughts on I don't know why this suddenly came to mind, but I wanted to know what you thought about the flag movement from last summer. You remember Operation
Yeah,
Raise the Colours,
yeah.
because I was, if you think about somewhere like Tower Hamlets, for example, in Tower Hamlets for months after 7th of October, they flew the Palestine flag from lampposts all around Tower Hamlets. But then as soon as some, British fellas put up the UK flag in Tower Hamlets, it was quite unceremoniously taken down, which means that it's easier in parts of London to fly the flag under which 1,000 Jews have just been killed than it is to fly the flag of Britain itself. It seemed to me that that was an interesting moment in working class people staking a claim to their own country. What did you think of that?
I think it's interesting for a number of reasons. I mean, firstly, I'm not massively in favour of waving lots of flags. And the waving of flags always seems to me to be a expression not of intimidation towards other people, but one of insecurity and fear on the part of the people waving the flags. You know, I went on a jaunt with my son to Daugavpils, which is sometimes it's in Latvia, and it's often regarded as the place where the Third World War will really break out, in that it's an entirely Russian city, but it's in Latvia, and there is a Latvian flag every 5 paces, and yet all the graffiti on the walls is in Cyrillic script. That it just ties in with my view that the flags are a signifier of fear, and I think the flags which the Brits put up in the East Midlands, in the Northeast, in the Northwest, are also a signifier of fear. They're a signifier that our country is being taken away from us, and I think it's entirely justifiable that they do that. There are nuances to it. I think there's probably a formula to work out, whereby from the number of St. George's flags in any particular town, you could work out the average income, in that, 500 flags, it's 1,000 quid below the national income level, and so on and so on. It's about deprivation, poverty, fear, and and suffering under circumstances which they do not like. The Union Jack is slightly different. The belligerence of the only place I would put a Union flag, if I had one, or a St. George's Cross, is Tower Hamlets. Or maybe Bradford West, or maybe Birmingham Sparkbrook. Those are the places where we need those flags.
Yeah. You're tempting me now to go down to Tower Hamlets, running through the streets with a Union flag, see what the response is.
Yeah.
It would be remiss of me not to ask you about the battle for the soul of the right. I'm keen to hear what you think about Kemi Badenoch, who seems to me has rediscovered her mojo to a certain extent. But, we can't let the Conservatives off the hook. If anything, they're as clapped out as Labour. But what do you think are the future prospects for the Conservative Party?
Well, I'm pretty worried. I mean, I think Kemi Badenoch has done a very good job in incredibly trying circumstances, given that whatever she says, the the response will always be, well, you have 14 years. I think she's good. There's a whiff of arrogance about her, and a certainty about her, and a decisiveness of purpose. And I think that probably the Conservative vote will grow and grow geographically in patches. So I don't think they're going to make much headway in the red wall areas, where there was never a great love for the Tories, in the first place. But as we saw in London and parts of the southeast and the ring around London, and maybe East Anglia, and possibly the lower middle classes in places like the East Midlands, there is a certain reservoir of votes for them there. But the truth is, no matter what Nigel says, is that I don't think that reform can quite do it by itself. There are still too many people who are too fastidious, who would call themselves centre-right, to vote for Nigel Farage. And I think that is a problem. And to a degree, Reform have been trying to deal with that. but they haven't succeeded yet. I think the projected vote from last week's council elections was around about 26%. They are polling at about 31% in the polls at the moment. They need 35. They need 35. So it's either come to a loose agreement of some kind with the Conservatives, or it's tried to come to a much more binding agreement after the votes have been cast. But I think even if they do that, there will need to be careful deliberation on both sides as to where they put their best candidates and the amount of effort they put into to the various seats. I think there has to be some entente between those two parties when we go into the next election.
That brings me on very nicely to my last question for you, Rod, on these tumultuous times we're living in, which is on the reform question or the Farage question, and really on whether working class Britain is rediscovering its voice, because these are left behind communities. I know that's a cliche, but they are people who've been ignored, who've been sneered at, I think you very apt description of their waving of flags as an expression of suffering, because I think there is a large part of that. It does give me some happiness that they finally found a party that they think is going to represent them. Whether it will or not, we will see. But is that the future of British politics, you think? These kind of populist revolts, patchy perhaps, but ordinary people restaking a claim to their right in public life?
Well, it's interesting, isn't it? I think that is the future, and I think it'll be the story of the next election. The worry is that we've had these populist revolts across Europe, and whatever parliamentary system in each country they've had, by and large, they've been kept from power, either through chicanery or simply because they didn't get enough votes. That's certainly true of the Front National, or whatever they're called these days. Maloney's slightly different in that I don't think she quite fits into that populist, and that may be the way out. But I still come back to this important issue that if you look at Nigel Farage's popularity ratings, they're as low as Keir Starmer's. And that's why you saw Gorton and Denton, and it's why you saw Caerphilly happen. These two by-elections, whereby the number of people who truly loathe Reform and Farage outnumber the people who think he's okay. And that is a massive problem for Reform. More of a problem in by-elections than in a general election, but still a problem in a general election anyway, I think.
Rod, thank you very much.